Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in this episode we are going to be working on adding our resume, right? So basically what we are simply going to be do is we are just going to be sending our resume to our backend, right? So as you can see, this is the resume screen. Let me just show you. So this is our add resume screen right there, and you can see we have the resume title, and then we have the pick CV or resume, right? So what we'll simply do at first is let me check if we can download like a dummy resume, right? So just say download dummy resume PDF. Okay, so let's just download a linked file, right? All right, so now that we are done, let's start working on our add resume feature, right? So basically what we are simply going to do first is go inside our resumes folder, and then inside our screen folder, right? Let's create a file called add resume screen. Okay, so it's going to be a stateful widget, right? All right, so now that we are done, let's make sure that since we are consuming Riverboat providers, let's just change to consumer widget, right? It's supposed to be consumer stateful widget. All right, and then also let's change this to consumer state. Okay, let's do the same here. All right, so let's just import Flutter Riverboat package. All right, so now that we are done, right, inside our below our override function, right, let's just create like a file, which we are a file variable, which we are just going to set to the file that the user will select, right? And then let's create another one, a string for the title. All right, so now that we're done, let's just make sure that we import the file, right? We import .io, right? And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a method, right, for picking the file. So that method is going to be of type void, right? And then it's going to be pick file. And then it's going to be an asynchronous method, right? And then at first we want the file picker result, right? So which can be null, right? So to get the result, we are going to get it from file picker dot platform, and then dot pick files, right? And then the type of file is simply going to be file type dot custom, right? And then we need to make sure that allowed extensions is going to be a PDF, right? Our file is going to be a PDF, right? All right, so now that we are done, the next thing that we need to do is we need to check if the result is not equal to null. That means that we have a file that is picked, right? So if we have a file that is picked, then we are going to just set state. So state allows us to just update the UI, right? And then we are going to set our selected file variable to the file path, right? Right, so which the path can be null, right? So we are done with the pick file stage, right? Now it's time for us to go inside our user interface. So inside our build method, right? The first thing that we need is we need to get the user ID, right? So, and then so you can still remember we can get it from our local auth repository, right? And get user ID. Okay. So now what we need to do here is we need to replace the placeholder widget with simply a scaffold widget, right? And then the bar, then we just put in a bar there, right? And then the title is simply going to be a text. And the text is going to be a resume, right? And then we're simply going to give a font size of 15 and then a font weight of bold, right? Okay, right. And then now we need to work on the body, right? So the body is going to be the body. Let's just make sure it's going to be a size box, and then we'll give it a width of double dot infinite, right? So want it to fill the whole screen. And then the child is going to be a column widget, right? And then we need to make sure that the main axis alignment is main axis alignment dot start, and then also the cross axis alignment dot set. And then inside our children, the first thing that we need is a text form widget, right? It's a text form field, right? And then enable suggestions, we are simply going to set it to true. And then keyboard type, we are going to make sure that it's text input. Text input type dot text, right? Then after this, the next one is going to, we have the onChanged method, right? So the onChanged method is going to take in a value as a parameter. And then what we're simply going to do is we are simply going to set the title to the value, right? And then what we also need to do is we need to decorate our text form field, right? So let's decorate it. We need an input decoration right there, right? So we need a focused border. So it's going to be outline input border, right? And then the border radius is going to be border radius dot circular, right? And then we give it like a radius of 10. then we also need to provide the border, right? So it's going to be also an outline input border. So let's just copy this outline input border here. Let's just copy it and then let's just paste it. All right, and then the next thing is going to be the hint text, right? So the hint text is going to be resume title. And then we also need a hint style. So the hint style is going to be a constant text style. And then we'll make sure that the color is black. And then we need to provide like a prefix icon. So the prefix icon is simply going to be an icon. And then icons.abc, right? And then we'll make sure that the color is going to be black. And then the size is going to be 20. So now what we simply have to do is we need to make sure that we set align label with hint to true, right? And then we also need a validator. So after the input declaration, so we need also a validator to validate our text form field, right? So we are going to check if we don't have any, if our value is empty, right? So if it's empty, what we're simply going to do is we're simply going to return enter resume title. And then else what we're simply going to do is we're simply going to return null. All right, so after that, after our text form field, right, what we're basically going to do now is we are just going to check if our selected file, right, is not equal to null. So that means that the user has picked up a file. So if it's not equal to null, right, what we are simply going to do is we're simply going to display the text, right? We're simply going to display the text with a path, right? And then the text is going to simply be selected file. And then we're going to set it to selected file.path, right? So the selected file can be empty. So let's just make sure that it's null there, right there, right? And then after that, what we're simply going to do is we need to display another text. So let's just copy this and then let's paste it below. It's going to be, now it's going to be no file selected. So let's just change it to no file selected. All right. So now that we are done, also we also need to check also if the selected file is not equal to null. So if it's not equal to null, that means that the user selected the file. What we're simply going to do now is we are simply going to return the center widget. So we want to center and then child, and then a size box, because we want to give our button a width and a height, right? So the width is going to be 400 sized box, right? So the width is going to be 400, then the height is going to be 60, right? And then child is going to be an elevated button. It's going to be an elevated button, and then on pressed we'll handle if the user presses, right? And then for the child now, we simply need to display a text, and then the text is going to be upload resume. Upload resume, right? And then we need to style our button. Okay, so let's style it. So we're going to use the elevated button property and then style from. And then the first thing is we are going to give it like a background color, which is going to be colors to black. Then another thing is we need to give it like a shape. So the shape is simply going to be a rounded rectangular border. And then we're just going to give it like a border radius. Then the border radius is going to be border radius dot circular. So the border radius is simply going to be 20 right there, right? And then else, let's simply copy the same pattern again. Let's paste it below, right? So here what we upload resume, and then the next one is pick CV or resume. Or resume. Okay, so now let's handle the upload resume. So to upload the resume, what we simply have to do is we simply have to read our resume controller provider. Resume controller provider dot notifier. We use notifier to be able to access the properties inside the resume provider. Then dot upload resume, right? Then dot upload resume, and then the resume is going to be it's going to come from our selected file, which can be nullable, and then the title is simply going to come from our title dot toString, right? And then the user ID is also going to be user ID dot toString, right? So now that we are done with this method right here, and then the second method for picking our CV, right, we're simply going to call out the pick file method, right, that we created above, pick file method right there, right? So now we are done with our add resume screen. So basically now what we need to do is let's go inside our util folder, and then let's go inside our route, right? So inside our route, what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to copy the last line here, and then I'm simply going to paste it below. And I'm going to change it to add resume screen, right? And resume screen right there, right? So now basically what you simply have to do is if we go into our resume screen right there, we have this text, my resume, and then we have actions, add resume, right? So what we're simply going to do is let's just wrap it to the gesture detector. and then on tab, so before we do that, let's go inside our main.dat file. Let's copy this right here again, and let's copy it below. So it's going to be from routes to add resume screen. And then let's make sure it's add resume screen. All right, so now basically now that we are done, what we simply do here is use the navigator class, and then push named, right? And then routes.add resume screen, right? Okay, so now that we are done, now let's just run our emulator, and then let's see if our method is working. So I'll restart again. Okay, so let's go to our settings, and then my resumes. What's going on? Let's just reload it. Let's just, and then my resumes, and then add resume. And then so let's just go, and let's just, what you can simply do here is add resume. Let's go to our, then let's grab this with a padding widget, and also wrap this one again with a padding widget, right? Okay, so now what we can simply do is let's just reload our application right there. All right, so my resumes, and then add resume, then saying like, resume picked. So let's try to pick a resume. Okay, I think it's because we don't have a PDF resume, so let's try to get one again. So we have it inside our downloads folder, but I don't know why it's not appearing. Let's check. So let's check again. Okay, so let's just save them to files, right? Then let's save. Okay, so done. So let's also save this one. save to files. Okay, and then let's go back to our job board application, and then let's see. So we have now, so let's just name it to, so okay, so basically what was simply, we need to also give this a padding. Let's give it a padding. Okay, so now just, you can see now, right? So the title, let's say senior backend developer. So let's try to upload it. As you can see, resume created successfully, right? So if I would reload our resume, if I load our application, now you can see we now have this senior backend developer. Okay, let's upload another one again. That's just senior iOS and Android. Okay, let's just call it senior mobile developer. Okay, so let's upload the resume. You can see that's telling us resume uploaded successfully. So what, reload our application. Now you can see we now have these resumes right there. Okay, so that was it, guys, on the resumes part. So in the next video, we are going to move on to sending job applications.